He didn't have a warrant, didn't have backup, didn't even have permission to be there. But when a royal guard saw something being smuggled out of Buckingham Palace in the dead of night, velvet cases clutched like contraband, he knew something was wrong. Then Camilla arrived, berated him for interfering, stripped him of duty on the spot. But he didn't protest. He followed, tracked her son's convoy through London, all the way to a luxury Mayfair penthouse. And what he found them hiding inside wasn't just gemstones. It was a royal cover-up. So before we reveal what really happened that night, make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon turned on and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Because what this royal guard uncovered was never meant to see the light of day. London at night doesn't sleep. It lingers. All steel reflections and muffled hums, flickering lamplight, cutting through damp autumn fog that clings to wrought iron like memory. Past the tourists and the late-night taxis, past shuttered cafes and ceremonial barriers, Buckingham Palace stood still, gates locked, duty roster clear. Another ceremonial day had ended. Sergeant Oliver Fairfax walked the cobbled edge of the courtyard, bearskin hat tucked beneath one arm, crimson tunic unbuttoned at the collar. His boots moved without rush. Trained, deliberate. Still humming with vigilance, even when the cameras weren't watching. 10 years in uniform, 2 in Helmand, 3 more guarding foreign dignitaries at Carlton House Terrace. Now, one of the senior ceremonial guards trusted with exterior rotation after dark. He wasn't the kind who missed details, which is exactly why, when the iron gates at the rear of the East Wing creaked open at 22:47 hours, gates that weren't supposed to open without logging, without written clearance, he stopped dead in his tracks. Out of the mist rolled a blacked-out luxury sedan. Not a palace car, no crest, no license escort. Engine purring like it belonged to someone who paid to be invisible. As the vehicle approached, the driver's side window rolled down just enough. Behind the glass, Thomas Parker Bowles. He gave a casual nod, like this wasn't unusual. "Evening, Sergeant." "Just picking something up. Running a little late." Oliver took a half-step forward, boots crunching on loose gravel. "Is that so, sir?" Gate wasn't logged. Thomas laughed, breezy. "It's been cleared through admin. Don't stress." But Oliver didn't move. "Sir, all inbound movement after 2200 hours requires a signature. I'll need to verify what's being collected." Thomas's mouth twitched. "Just personal effects. Some gifts for my mother. Nothing official." Oliver didn't reply. Then came the second vehicle. Sleek, state-plated. Rear door already open before it stopped. From inside emerged Queen Camilla. Hair wrapped in a silk scarf, dark coat clutched close, eyes alert behind rimless glasses. She moved briskly, not the royal pace for press cameras, but the stride of someone trying not to be seen. Behind her came 2 aides, each holding a case. Velvet, gilded corners, smaller than luggage, heavier than they looked. Oliver stepped forward again. "Evening, Your Majesty." Camilla barely looked at him. "Sergeant?" "I must ask what's being removed from the palace tonight." One aide froze. The other hesitated mid-step. That hesitation told Oliver everything. He'd seen it before, in checkpoints near Helmand, when contractors carried munitions they weren't supposed to have. That split-second pause before the lie, the mental calculation of whether to run or talk. The aide's grip on the velvet case shifted, tighter, protective, like he was holding something fragile or incriminating. Camilla turned sharply. "Are you interrogating a member of the royal family?" "I'm upholding protocol, ma'am." She walked right up to him, close enough for him to smell cold perfume and something sharper beneath it. Anxiety, maybe, or guilt dressed in Chanel. "These cases are private. Even private items require verification when moved across royal grounds." Oliver's eyes tracked to the cases again. The brass corners caught the lamplight. Those weren't modern travel cases. Those were archival containers. The kind used in the royal collection for transporting items between sites. Temperature-controlled interiors. Humidity seals. Custom-fitted for specific pieces. He'd seen them used exactly twice. Once during the Queen's funeral preparations, and once when a Gainsborough portrait was moved to the National Gallery for restoration. They weren't moving gifts. They were moving history. Camilla's expression hardened. "You're a palace statue with a shiny button. Don't pretend you're anything more." Oliver stood his ground, so she reached up and ripped the bearskin hat from his arm. "You're dismissed," she said, low and cold. "Permanently." The guards behind Oliver didn't move. They'd seen what he saw, but none dared speak. As the cars pulled away into the fog and the velvet cases disappeared into the night, Oliver stood alone, breath shallow, fingers tightening where his hat had been. He wasn't ashamed. He was certain. The palace grounds returned to stillness, but Oliver Fairfax did not move. His breath clouded in the cool air. Somewhere behind him, a fellow guard coughed once and pretended not to have seen. The gravel beneath his boots seemed louder than usual. In his hands, nothing. No bearskin hat, no symbol of post, no uniformed identity, just silence. And the image burned into his memory. Those velvet cases, tucked discreetly beneath the arms of Camilla's aides. Handled not like ceremonial gifts or royal heirlooms, but like contraband, like treasure being smuggled out of a castle in plain sight. He replayed the moment, the suddenness of her arrival, the sharpness of her tone, the glint of fury in her eyes when he challenged her authority. It wasn't just inconvenience, it had been panic. Camilla's reaction hadn't come from surprise. It had come from being caught. And Thomas? Thomas had looked back from his window as the convoy pulled away. Not with triumph, with worry. Oliver's instincts, honed through years of war-zone watchfulness, flared hot. Something was wrong. He turned slowly and walked back toward the barracks. No one spoke to him, not because they didn't care, but because they knew. Guards don't usually get dismissed on the spot, not for citing protocol, not unless they've touched something powerful. Inside the officers' hall, he removed his tunic with mechanical precision, draped it across the bench, and opened the locker assigned to ceremonial detail. His heart thudded with each movement, measured, focused, dangerous. He retrieved what wasn't supposed to be touched, his personal sidearm, holstered in the false panel behind the dress rack. Not regulation, but not illegal either. A relic from Afghanistan, just like him. Outside, the city lights blinked like distant signals. He slipped into a dark coat, pulled the collar high, and took the back passage toward the staff parking zone. No salute, no sign-out, no alarm, just intent. Because Oliver Fairfax had served the Crown long enough to know when something sacred had been violated. The convoy hadn't turned toward Clarence House, nor Lancaster House, not Windsor. They'd headed east, toward Mayfair. And he knew exactly what sat at the top of Dover Street's Tower Penthouse, the private residence of Thomas Parker Bowles. A place built with quiet funds and questionable renovations. There had been whispers, luxury renovations paid for through heritage partnerships, contracts that bypassed Parliament scrutiny. No one had investigated. No one wanted to. But Oliver had remembered, and now he followed. Past midnight, traffic faded to quiet murmurs. His motorcycle whispered down side streets, tracking the direction of the convoy. No sirens, no rush. Just a man stripped of duty, choosing to serve anyway. He reached the tower just as the last of the aides vanished inside with the final case. They didn't notice him watching, didn't notice the man they thought they'd broken, now standing in the shadows beneath the penthouse they thought was untouchable. And this time, he wouldn't knock. The Mayfair Tower loomed above like a crownless fortress, sleek glass skin, floodlit trim, and a mirrored lobby that reflected nothing but wealth. A building meant to be admired, not questioned. Guarded not by soldiers, but concierge smiles and biometric locks. Sergeant Oliver Fairfax stood across the street beneath the skeletal outline of a plane tree, motionless in the shadows. His coat collar was pulled high against the wind. His hat long gone, but his posture hadn't changed. Stripped of title, not of oath. His fingers tapped lightly against his thigh, measuring breath against instinct. Camilla had humiliated him, sure, but that wasn't the wound. It was the cases, the way her aides held them, both reverently and urgently. He'd seen men smuggle ancient manuscripts in Kandahar with less care. And Thomas, fumbling, red-faced, faking calm, hadn't even tried to mask the guilt. What had the Queen Consort said as she stripped him? "You'll not be standing at my gates tomorrow, or ever again." Then perhaps it wasn't her gates anymore, because if she was using those gates to funnel out pieces of the crown, then they didn't belong to her. They belonged to history, to legacy, to Elizabeth. Oliver crossed the street, silent and sure. The lobby was staffed by a lone night clerk behind a polished desk, typing half asleep. Oliver didn't enter. He turned down the alley and disappeared into the loading bay. He counted cameras as he moved, one above the parking chute, another rotating lazily near the service stairs. He'd done recon like this in the dark, near Helmand airstrips. This was just glass instead of dust. He pulled the maintenance map from his coat, a folded blueprint, old but reliable, once sent to ceremonial units during a diplomatic visit. Most forgot they had it. He hadn't. The penthouse was accessible through 2 points: the glass elevator shaft, rigged with dual access controls, or the emergency fire stairwell, hidden behind the east stairwell door. He chose the second. The service entrance was keycard protected, but Oliver didn't try to bypass it. He waited. A sleepy janitor stepped outside moments later with a mop bucket. Oliver approached, calm and precise. "Power's out on level 3, he muttered with authority, flashing an ID he'd kept from a MOD training liaison rotation years ago. Supervisor said, "Check insulation line." The janitor blinked, nodded, held the door open. Oliver was inside. Once in, his pace changed. Quieter. Focused. Steps absorbed by polished cement and old habit. He moved like a man who belonged in silence, one flight at a time, breath measured, ears sharp. By level 7 he passed the building's private gym, empty. By level 10 he passed a kitchen staff hallway, lights off. By level 14 the stairs ended. Penthouse level. He paused, drew his sidearm, not to shoot. But because doors don't always stay shut, and men with stolen treasures don't always stay calm, he pressed a gloved hand to the final door. Breath in, heart steady. One last ascent. Because if the Queen's legacy was being hidden up there, Oliver wasn't leaving until it was uncovered. The stairwell door clicked open without resistance. Oliver Fairfax eased it shut behind him with the care of a bomb technician. The hallway ahead was plush, far too plush for what it protected. Cream carpet, recessed lighting, a scent of fresh eucalyptus from somewhere in the ceiling vents. Wealth always tried to disguise itself as serenity, but his boots were silent. To the right, a narrow vestibule with a smart mirror and security panel. To the left, the private elevator landing, sealed with a biometric panel. The same one Camilla and her aides had used. A faint hum carried through the ceiling. Voices. 2, maybe 3 people in the next room. He crouched beneath the frame of a wall-mounted painting, a portrait of Queen Elizabeth no less, hung without reverence near a coat rack, littered with cashmere scarves. He moved. First threat. Hallway guard. A uniformed man leaned near the study doorway, checking his phone. Private security, not palace-trained, but ex-police by the stance. Unbuttoned holster. Lazy grip. Oliver timed his breath. 1 step. Then 2. On the 3rd he struck. Arm around the neck, palm over the mouth, dragging him silently into the coat closet. The man struggled once, then collapsed in a heap onto a pile of designer luggage. Oliver pulled the door shut. Next threat, surveillance. A dome camera rotated above the corridor intersection. He moved directly under it, pulled a 3-inch tactical blade, and flicked it into the motor hinge with surgical precision. Sparks spat once. The camera froze. No alarms. 3rd threat, backroom security. From the corner of the hallway, he spotted another man seated on a bar stool, eyes half-lidded, earbuds in. A tablet on his lap. CCTV feeds. Frozen. He wasn't watching. Oliver walked toward him. The man looked up. Too late. A quick twist. The guard slumped sideways, still breathing but out cold. Oliver dragged him behind the bar. He stood slowly now. No more footsteps to mask. No more guards between him and the truth. The main door to the penthouse's inner chamber, where the valuables were always rumoured to be, sat 10 feet away. Walnut frame, brushed gold trim, key-coded but outdated. He'd seen newer at the MOD's forgotten archives. He reached for a small steel pen clipped to his belt, twisted the top. The hidden lockpick slid out. 2 ticks, 1 scrape. The bolt gave with a soft click. He opened the door an inch and froze. Inside, the lighting was different, cooler, more clinical. He could see rows of velvet boxes on a centre table, chests partially opened. Soft, glinting edges caught the light like diamonds whispering in the dark. And there, in the middle of it all, stood Camilla, speaking to someone, back turned. Thomas Parker Bowles. Oliver's jaw tightened. He'd made it. Now came the part where silence would end and truth would begin. The door creaked open, just enough for Oliver Fairfax to slip through. The scent hit him first, a mix of waxed wood, linen preservative and old money. The kind of air that didn't circulate, that protected. The room was dimly lit, but not forgotten. Purposeful light glowed from a set of overhead sconces, illuminating only the centre table. Long, lacquered mahogany, crowded with objects that had no business being outside royal archives. A velvet case lay cracked open at the centre, its lid folded neatly behind it. Inside, a cluster of emeralds, large enough to rival museum pieces. Not jewellery for display. Crown-level gemstones, mounted and unmounted, surrounded by hand-written inventory slips and tagging stickers, hastily peeled off. Around them, other boxes, silk-lined trays and padded envelopes. Loose notes, auction estimates, currency conversion charts, folded contracts. One sheet had the words Zurich Transfer written in the corner beside a stamp from an offshore holding company. He stepped closer, heart pounding but hands steady. Lifted a second box lid. Inside, a tiara base frame, its jewel settings empty, the silhouette unmistakably Windsor. He wasn't looking at storage. He was looking at a royal dismantling operation. Oliver moved methodically now, opening case after case. Queen Mary's pearl choker. The real one, not the restored version that had been photographed at last year's state dinner. Inside, another velvet pouch, the original Cullinan 5 brooch, its heart-shaped diamond, unmistakable even in low light. He'd seen the replica at the Tower of London just 3 months ago during a ceremonial inspection. The weight difference alone would have given it away to anyone who'd actually held the original, but no one had checked. Why would they? A leather portfolio lay beneath the gemstone trays. He opened it. Inside, certificates of authenticity, insurance appraisals, and, most damning, emails. Correspondence between Thomas and a Geneva-based private collector known for discreet acquisitions. One email subject line read, Victorian-era pieces, final pricing approval. Another, shipment timeline, confirm Zurich receipt. They hadn't just stolen heirlooms, they'd built an entire supply chain. Across the far wall stood 2 chrome safes. The smaller one hung open. Inside, neat stacks of cash, not pounds, but euros and francs, rubber-banded in bricks. Dozens of them. Quiet currency. On a small desk nearby sat a laptop still on, showing encrypted email threads and reference numbers, shipment records, appraisals, and a list of international phone numbers with code names next to them. But what stopped him cold was a ledger bound in navy leather with a royal seal hot stamped on the corner. He opened it. Each page bore a title. Item, removed from, replaced with, estimated value, disposition plan. Rows and rows of entries. Cambridge sapphire brooch, Windsor Vault 3, A. Replica, Double Heart Kempstone, £620,000. Geneva auction prep. QRE coronation earrings, Windsor East display. Replicas. Cubic zirconia. £1.1 million. Zurich transit. Sovereign order medallions. Exhibition collection. Recast brass. £250,000. Pending. This was the entire forgery record. A playbook of deception, each line a theft, buried behind velvet and pageantry. He didn't feel adrenaline, he felt still. Then, faintly, footsteps, voices. He snapped the ledger shut and slid it inside his coat. The door opened fully behind him. Camilla. Thomas. She froze mid-sentence, the words dying on her tongue. Thomas's jaw fell open. Oliver didn't flinch. He stood beside their open jewels, like a man who had just raided a museum of ghosts. "I wondered how long it would take you," Camilla said coldly, "even without your silly hat." Thomas stepped forward, indignant, voice cracking. "This is trespassing!" "You broke into private royal property." Oliver's eyes didn't leave them. "And you broke the crown." "Do you know what you've just done?" Camilla's voice was sharp enough to crack porcelain. Oliver Fairfax stood firm. He was still coated in shadows and dust from the hallway, sleeves rolled, boots dulled from the climb. And yet, he looked as if he belonged in that room more than either of them. There was nothing left to sneak, only the truth to be said aloud. Thomas slammed the door behind them and moved quickly across the room, jaw clenched. "You don't understand anything about this. You're a guard, not a banker." Oliver didn't answer. His eyes dropped to the sapphire tiara frame, glinting under the soft lights. Then to the case filled with raw, unset rubies, each tagged, each once worn by a monarch. "You were going to sell them," Oliver said flatly. "Auction them off behind closed doors, strip what mattered and bury the rest." Camilla's smile was all teeth. "Oh, spare us your fantasy of duty. What matters isn't the jewels. It's the illusion they create. And illusions can be recreated." Oliver looked at her. "So you replaced history with stage props." Thomas stepped forward, trembling with rage. "You think people care about stones and silk? We're trying to preserve relevance. My mother is keeping the monarchy alive while the country tears itself apart." "You're gutting it," Oliver snapped. Camilla's tone sharpened. "You're finished, Fairfax. You think breaking into a royal residence will earn you medals? You'll be locked up, forgotten. You'll never stand post again." Oliver's eyes burned steady. "I already lost my post. You ripped it off my head yourself," she sneered, "and I'll rip off whatever's left." She moved toward the desk phone, gold-plated, ridiculous, and lifted the receiver. "One call. That's all it takes. Security police. Palace legal counsel. You'll be in custody before dawn." Oliver didn't move, just watched her. She dialed 3 numbers, paused. Then her eyes flicked back to the button camera on his coat, the blinking red light. Her hand hovered over the keypad. Because she knew whatever she said next would be recorded. Whatever threats she made, whatever lies she tried to sell, all of it captured, all of it evidence. She set the phone down slowly. "You've made a grave mistake," she said, voice tight. "No," Oliver replied. "I've corrected one." Thomas lunged, hand out, maybe to grab the ledger sticking from Oliver's coat. He didn't make it far. Oliver stepped into him hard, locked his arm and twisted. Thomas gasped and dropped to his knees with a thud. No violence, just training. Camilla screamed, stepping back. "You'll hang for this!" "No," Oliver said, "I haven't laid a hand on either of you, but I've documented everything." He held up a tiny button cam clipped to his coat seam, the blinking red light, unmistakable. Every word, every jewel, every account. For a moment there was silence. Then Camilla stepped close, too close, voice low and dangerous. "You won't make it out that door." Oliver didn't blink. "I already have." Her fury cracked. "You think anyone will believe a disgraced footman over the crown?" "I'm not accusing the crown," he replied. "I'm protecting it." He reached for the ledger and held it up between them. This is Elizabeth's legacy. You're melting down for cash." Camilla's hands trembled, her voice barely a whisper now. "You don't get to speak her name." Oliver didn't move. "She stood for something. And you're tearing it down so you can wear it." The air turned heavy, full of threat and truth, and something ancient that had just been pulled back into the light. And then, from the hallway, a voice. Deep, royal, cold. Enough! The room froze at the sound. Enough! The voice came from behind the door, unmistakable, sharp with age, but firm with memory. It didn't yell. It didn't need to. King Charles stepped into the chamber. His presence was not ceremonial. No fanfare, no military escort, no television crew. Just the man himself, coat still damp from the fog, eyes sunken from a night of suspicion, and expression carved from granite. Two aides followed close behind, eyes wide as they took in the scene. Velvet cases splayed open, jewels glinting like accusations, and Camilla, red-faced, frozen mid-turn, with Thomas still kneeling on the floor where Oliver Fairfax had put him. Charles didn't look at his son. Not yet. He stared at the boxes, the unset gemstones, the auction sheets, the hot-stamped Royal Collection ledger peeking from Oliver's coat. He knew what he was looking at. Camilla stepped forward fast, trying to get ahead of it. "He's gone rogue," she hissed. "This is a break-in. An armed guard forced his way in." Oliver didn't speak. Charles held up one hand. "Let him talk," Camilla balked. "You're taking his word?" "No," Charles said. "I'm taking a look." He stepped past her, over to the long table. He reached for the velvet box nearest to him, the Cambridge emerald pendant, unmistakable. The king blinked once. His fingers didn't tremble, but his throat worked tightly. "This piece was listed as on tour in Edinburgh," he said quietly. "It was supposed to be under protective display." Camilla replied too quickly. "We removed it for preservation." The security at that venue was substandard. He cut her off. "That decision would have required my approval." Thomas, trying to climb to his feet, muttered, "It was meant to be temporary." "We were just organising staging before rehousing." Charles turned slowly. "In a private Mayfair penthouse? Without logging? Without escort? Without chain of custody?" Thomas paled. Camilla tried to recover. "These were never going to be lost," she snapped. "They were going to be reintroduced later, in a more modernised context." Oliver finally spoke. "Modernised how? Melted down? Sold abroad? Auctioned in Zurich?" He pointed toward the stack of contracts. "These aren't preparations. These are transactions." Charles moved to the table now, lifting another case. Inside, Queen Elizabeth's personal correspondence, letters she'd written to Prince Philip during the war, tied with pale blue ribbon, marked in the ledger as archived. But here they sat, in a penthouse, next to currency bricks and offshore banking codes. He picked up one letter carefully. The paper was thin, delicate. The ink had faded, but the handwriting was unmistakable. His mother's voice, preserved in cursive, a private memory meant to stay private, now catalogued like inventory for sale. "This was never yours to take," Charles said quietly. His voice cracked on the last word. Camilla opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Charles set the letter down with trembling hands and turned to Oliver. "How long has this been happening?" Oliver glanced at the ledger. "First entry is dated 11 months ago, 2 weeks after the funeral." Charles's eyes fell on the ledger Oliver held. The seal was unmistakable. "Where did you find this?" he asked. "In your son's safe," Oliver replied calmly, "beside foreign cash and a box of false replicas." Camilla's jaw clenched. "You have no authority to touch those items." Charles looked at her then, truly looked at her, and for the first time in that room, Camilla backed up half a step. The king turned to his aide and spoke with quiet weight. "Call Windsor. Tell them I'm invoking full repatriation." Camilla gasped. "Charles!" He raised a hand, silencing her again. "I've seen enough." Then he looked at Oliver. "Where's your hat, Sergeant?" Oliver didn't answer. He didn't need to. But Charles stepped closer. "I believe it's time we gave it back." Oliver Fairfax stood still as King Charles reached into the hands of an aide behind him and took something wrapped in navy cloth. He unfolded it carefully, almost reverently, then turned toward Oliver and lifted the item with quiet finality. The bearskin hat, pristine, regal, impossibly tall. It looked absurd in isolation until it sat atop the right head. Charles stepped forward, face unreadable. "For defying protocol," he said quietly, "you risked everything." He lowered the hat into Oliver's hands. "For defending something higher, you've honoured the legacy this family has forgotten." Oliver took it without a word. His fingers curled around it with slow, iron restraint. Not pride, not triumph, just duty returned. Camilla looked stunned. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Charles didn't face her. He turned to the piles of evidence, the jewels, the ledger, the contracts. "To strip this monarchy down, to shine and shadow," he said coldly. "You looted a legacy I was meant to preserve. One I swore to protect." Thomas tried to protest. "We didn't steal. We safeguarded." "By hiding them in your flat?" Charles snapped. "By falsifying inventory? By preparing sales to private buyers in Switzerland?" He gestured sharply to the aide nearest him. "Lock every case. Secure the room. Full chain of custody under Royal Collection oversight. Nothing leaves until Windsor has logged and verified it." Camilla finally broke her silence. Her voice came out brittle, scraping. "We did what you wouldn't. We saved what mattered." Charles turned slowly. "You didn't save it. You erased it." Her face twitched, fury barely contained. "You're throwing us to the wolves," she said. "I'm returning what you stole," he answered. He stepped past her and placed a hand gently on one of the velvet pouches, the smallest one, nearly hidden beneath a stack of contracts. He opened it quietly. Inside sat a small, unassuming gemstone, a pink diamond clouded by age. No crown mount, no medal, just a loose heirloom resting in silk. "She wore this at Balmoral," Charles said, more to himself than the room. "Pinned it inside her coat. Said it reminded her of her father." He turned, walked it over to Oliver, and held it out. "I can't offer you a title. And I won't insult you with a promotion." He pressed the pouch into Oliver's palm. "But let this remind you that someone still sees what you did, and why you did it." Oliver bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, sir." Charles gave a faint nod, then finally turned back to Camilla. "You may still wear the title," he said, voice low. "But after tonight, don't pretend you carry the crown." She stood there, lips trembling, but said nothing. The aides moved in silently. The room shifted into action. Locks snapped shut. Boxes were sealed. Chains of custody written. The crown, piece by piece, reclaimed by its rightful stewards. And in the middle of it all stood Sergeant Oliver Fairfax, hat returned, legacy intact, as the weight of what he'd done finally settled like dust on old stone. Should a royal guard break orders, if it means defending the late Queen's legacy? Was King Charles too late in acting, or did he finally do the right thing? And if you saw something suspicious, would you risk everything to expose the truth? Let us know what you would have done in the comments below. We read every single one. If you believe no one, not even royalty, should rewrite what Queen Elizabeth stood for, hit that like button to show your support. Make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon turned on so you never miss what really happens behind palace walls. And don't keep this to yourself. Share this video with someone who still believes the crown should be protected, not pawned. Another story is already waiting for you on screen. Click to watch it next. We upload daily. Same time tomorrow. We'll see you then.